and players smiling. But Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jason Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Big Three NBA podcast. You have the usual crew today. Me, Kwani Lunis, Sherrod Blakely, Gary Washburn, but we have a special guest who I already apologized to in advance because she now has to deal with all three of us. Noa Dalzell, who is also with CLNS Media. Thank you for being with us. And again, best of luck.
Kwani, the only one you got to apologize for is Gary. He's the only one that's a problem. Everyone else is good.
Not true.
Gary's the problem child. That's all.
Not true.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
She says that now. All right, let's
I'll report back at the end of the
If
episode.
Sherrod says, "See, the thing is," he's about to lie. Just
Now, you know what's going to happen. He's going to say it, and then we're going to be like, here we go.
See, the thing is, when he does that, it's game coming.
We need
That's-
like a
that's
cheat
the warning.
sheet to like
Yeah,
warn
we need a
people. I think
Sherrod
that's
cheat
the
sheet.
key.
I'm going to have to go back and watch some of our Summer League content now, Sherrod.
What's that?
See who's lying to you?
Yeah. See, the thing is, yep.
See what happened was.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
So
what's that
last
talking?
week, let's get into it. So last week, right before this big news drop, we were talking about O'Shea Brissett and whether or not the Celtics were going to keep his contract. He had hoped that they would, but the day after we found out that Lonnie Walker was signed by the Celtics, and Washburn actually tossed it out on our podcast, talking about the fact that he would be a good addition to this Celtics roster. But I guess I'll start with Noah first. Are you surprised that they made this move?
I'm surprised that Lonnie Walker can't get a contract anywhere, just because, he's just had more production than a lot of other guys that have signed longer term, more secure deals. And then, I don't know. I mean, this sounds like one of those things that there's a really good chance that he's not actually signed to the 15th roster spot at the end of the day. So I'm mostly curious about what is it about him that is not mainstream knowledge that we're missing? Is it a locker room thing? Is it a defensive thing? Is it just, does he have a bad agent and he's just played his cards poorly? Like, I don't know what it is, but that was the part that was most surprising to me. And then seeing that he actually got signed, when I got the notification, I was like, okay, like finally. I think just that day, like a highlight video of his was circulating on Twitter, so it was like very front of mind. And then not surprised the Celtics took the chance because they don't really have anything to lose here. I guess I'm just curious about how this is going to play out and if there's something about him that is just not mainstream knowledge that we're missing.
I think with Lonnie, it feels like this is almost like the insurance policy to back up the insurance policy. When you think about the fact that he's sort of kind of, but not really that 15th roster spot guy. And make no mistake, this Exhibit 10 contract, we're not talking about Taco Fall Exhibit 10 guy, someone who you just don't know if he can play at this level. With Lonnie, you know what you're getting. You're getting a good player who, in the right situation, can give you some juice off that bench. And I think he's a guy that you kind of keep around in case, one of your core wings, either, suffers some type of injury or there's something that keeps them out for a significant period of time. And you've got a guy that you can turn to right up the road in Portland, Maine, who can give you some production that you're not wondering if he can actually contribute at this level. It's a smart play on the Celtics' part, without question. And to your point, Noah, I don't understand why the hell Lonnie isn't signed to a longer-term deal with someone else. I mean, he's still relatively young. He doesn't have a long story past with injuries. I know things did not look great for him when he was in Brooklyn, but he's still a good player that can do a lot of things, I think, out there on the floor. So I'm just as shocked as anyone that he was available. But I can't quite put my finger on why that guy was someone that they could actually add to the mix and do so without locking up that 15th roster spot, which to me is the genius behind this move.
Gary, before we hear your thoughts now, let's hear what you had to say last week.
I mean, there's a group of guys out there, Lonnie Walker, who, to me, that'd be a good fit. I mean, that's a guy who could get buckets, only 26 years old and a scorer. I mean, that's a guy that if I'm the Celtics, I take a flyer on him.
All right, Gary. So now that the move is official, what do you think about the Celtics bringing him on?
Yeah, I was a little stunned because he was kind of the top free agent out there. I think the only Remaining one is Isaac Okoro, who's on a restricted free agent with Cleveland, and restricted free agency has basically died with this new CBA. So no one, like, remember Grant Williams was a restricted free agent last year. So Lonnie Walker was like the top guy. The rest of the guys like Marcus Morris, guys who have had either or have a lot of tread on the tires or maybe an issue here or there. Lonnie's 25 years old, scored a lot per minute off the bench for Brooklyn. I mean, I saw him on the meetings against the Celtics, and he was putting up buckets and he was getting to the rim. He's still a great athlete. I don't think he's filled with his potential. I think in San Antonio, it just didn't work out. I know he went through some personal stuff there, kind of, had some issues there off the floor. Not talking anything bad, but just was finding himself in San Antonio. Then he went to the Lakers, and everybody goes in and out of the Lakers, so you can't really count that. Brooklyn's kind of starting over, but it's kind of interesting, like, I'm not surprised that he would sign a guaranteed deal, but the fact that it's a training camp deal, the Celtics have to be making in some promises. Obviously, I think he gets a couple of $100,000 if he doesn't make the roster or goes to Maine. But I just think you got to add him to this roster spot. I just don't think there's anyone like him over O'Shea Brissett is a serious upgrade. I mean, that's just it's unquestionable. O'Shea couldn't score. O'Shea's offensively was really, really, just like most Syracuse players, he was terrible offensively. But
he did have a job in the NBA, which says a little bit more than a lot of guys in Cal. But that's another story.
Sherrod. Anyway,
oh my God, I can't even talk with my BC.
He wasn't terrible. He wasn't terrible. No, BC with the football.
I mean, recently, yeah.
You got swag right now. But I just think filling that roster spot with Lonnie Walker, and the Celtics have needed offense off the bench for years. Like I always said, like they needed not Jamal Crawford himself because he was a little old, but a Jamal Crawford type, a guy like a Jordan Crawford maybe several years ago, a guy who could come off the bench and, hey, try to play defense because you have four of the defenders on the floor that can maybe make up, but a guy who can just fill it up off the bench, kind of like a Malcolm Brogdon did a little bit. They could really use that. And I just think this guy fills that role in the backcourt. Because, you don't want to put that kind of pressure on Peyton Pritchard, although Peyton kind of had moments of that. But I think it's a great signing. I would hope that he'd make the team and be that 15th guy, and you could figure out what to do with Luke Cornett or, guys, if you need to create another roster spot. But I think you got to go into the season with Lonnie Walker on your roster.
So it's obvious from all what you guys said, and again, what you said last week, Gary, why he should be on this roster, but how realistic is it for a 10-day exhibition contract to turn into a real one?
There's got to be some type of, agreement beyond just like you're trying out, kid. Like he's not going to be, well, what's the other guy that blew his knee out?
Jay Scrubb. Jay Scrubb.
Yeah, Jay Scrubb. He's not going to be Jay Scrubb. Like he's not going to be like this dude's a proven NBA player, right? So this is not a guy who's stepping in like, okay, dude, you're headed to Maine, or like when they had Denzel Valentine and guys like that who were basically 4A players, G League players who could play here and there in the NBA, but not much. Like Lonnie Walker is a guy who could be your ninth man off the bench, especially in the backcourt. Does that threaten maybe Peyton's minutes? Who knows? But at this point, you're trying to go back to back. You ain't worried about egos. Like guys will have to sacrifice something. And if you want to load your roster with what New York did, with what Philadelphia did, everybody's coming after the Celtics. This is needed. So I think it's a great chance for him to make the team. There's got to be an agreement. His agent would not just have him in a training camp deal. Like there's got to be some type of promise there. If not, you go to a bad team, get a minimum deal, and make $3 million and boost your stock for next year. And just bet on yourself if you don't want a long-term deal. I mean, like Svi Mihalik signed a 4-year deal with Utah. Like what are we doing? Like with I think the first 2 years guaranteed. So if Svi could sign a 4-year deal, Lonnie could get a year, right? Like what's going on here?
But to Noah's point, I think the 10 days will give the Celtics enough time, hopefully, to figure out why exactly he hasn't been on a roster, if there is anything underlying as well. Hopefully. All right, we have a new segment on this podcast. It's called Fall Fire It Up. It's a series that we're going to start from now until the start of training camp, and we will break down the key pieces of the Celtics, hopefully getting banner 19. I forgot they already got 18. But first up, Joe Mazzulla.
Gary's guy.
Your best friend. His leadership specifically, where are the areas of growth that you all think are most important for him this season?
Go ahead, Gary. Start off
Hold
with
on,
your
jump
guy.
at one.
I'm not starting with this one.
He said,
Noah,
I'm not
please,
going for it.
No, as our guest, please start with your assessment.
Noah,
Now he's
then
an
Gary,
assist
then
guy.
Sherrod. Sherrod's
Now he's
last.
going to pass.
Sandwich him in the middle.
I don't know. I think it's tough. I always feel like it's hard from, at least from like the beat writer's perspective, to really evaluate coaches. Like I especially like, my point in my career, I was on the beat for 1 year. I feel like it's really hard to be able to gauge what you're seeing on the court and how that's connected to the actual coach's performance. And it's really easy, like, so things like timeouts and rotations, I feel like, are the things that we can see. But outside of that, we're kind of looking for clues. And I feel like I take a lot of what I concluded about Joe from what the player said and just the way that they talked about him and things like that. So if to that point, I think the one thing that I would love to see is like maybe a little bit more during, like, in the earlier parts of the season, of just like taking risks on different players off the bench. And I think that they will, just because I do feel like getting rest for guys like Drew Holiday and Derek White and Jason Tatum and all those guys, like, getting them off nights, I think that'll happen. But I would love to see him like take more chances and instill more confidence in like some of those lower bench players, because by the playoffs, like, there was a really fixed number of players that were like for sure not going to be in the rotation. And then it stood out in some series, is like against Indiana, where all of a sudden they have like 10 guys that are ready to go. Boston really didn't. That was like one of the few knocks I think that you can say on that team, because they were obviously very deep and the bench was very effective. So that's like maybe a wish list item, because behind the scenes, like, I don't know exactly where, I'm sure he has things that he needs to work on, but it would just be harder for me to pinpoint those.
That's real.
I'm going to say that Joe needs to be just as disciplined and locked in for this year as he was last year, because there's that natural lax that you're going to have. Now, who knows what Jason and Jalen will be like going into this season. They might be super motivated, right? But you come off a championship, you're going to take a step. Look at the Denver Nuggets. Look at, there hasn't been a repeat champion since the Warriors, and everyone's coming after you. The Knicks are going to try to like send a message on that opening night game. The Sixers are going to try to do the same thing on Christmas. Like, if you're Joe, you've got to motivate your guys, especially without Porzingis for the first 2-3 months of the season, to be ready for every challenge, even Washington, Detroit, even the bad teams, because this is their Super Bowl. And so you've got to spend training camp instilling in these guys like, okay, you've gotten over to the mountaintop. Let's try to make history. Let's try to be the first Celtics team to repeat since 68, 69, right? Mm-hmm. Since Bill Russell was the coach. And Bill Russell was a player coach. Like, let's do something special here. Bird and McHale and Parrish, those guys won 3 and 5 years. They didn't repeat. The big three with Garnett, Allen, and Pierce won 1 championship, went to game 7 of another. Let's make history. If you're Joe, you try to push that on those guys. You try to be as intense and try to think of different ways to motivate, to get your guys to start punching first, because the one thing that we all kind of have a what if is that 08-09 season, when I think they started out like 29-3 and they were knocking people out, and then Garnett got hurt in Utah and they were never the same and they lost to the Magic. If that team had stayed healthy, Garnett had stayed healthy, that might have been a repeat. And the Celtics came out with the right mindset. Doc got those guys ready to come out saying, hey, they're all coming after you. You are on their wall. You're on their dartboard. Like,
more Ubuntu.
Yes. Like, play like your hair's on fire. And I think, in referring to what Noah said, like, not necessarily playing everybody 43 minutes, like burning them out, but using your depth, but also having that motivation. I think Joe needs to be, and I'm sure he will be. I talked to him a week after the season ended, and he was already trying to figure out ways to keep the guys motivated and make sure they're ready for this season, because this will be more difficult than the last one. Getting back to the mountaintop with teams coming at them will be more difficult. I expect Joe, and understand Joe, he's going to be more intense. Now, how will that reflect with us? I don't know. Will we be a little bit more defensive and sensitive? We'll see. But I do think Joe's going to have some different ways to motivate his guys to punch first and get off to a good start and not be fourth in the East because, you just kind of chilled and then do that, try to flip the switch in April. Like, he'll get those guys ready. That's what I expect.
I think the effort to do that, Gary, is going to be there. I don't think there's any question that Joe understands that sense of urgency that they need to bring with a consistent basis. But these are NBA champions. And historically, NBA champions, whether it's a conscious or subconscious thing, they start playing the fat and happy game where they feel that, we won a championship. We didn't play perfect basketball last year, but we got it done when we needed to. I worry that Joe is not going to get them to understand the need to have that urgency all season long. I worry that this team will lose a couple games and guys will be bothered by that, but they won't necessarily have that sense of urgency to flip things around and not wait till March or April to try and get things going. They need to play with the same level of focus and intensity, if not more so, this year than they did last year. And I think Joe is going to do what he thinks will help that. But I don't know how his message is going to resonate this year. Last year, Joe had a captive audience because they all had the same goal, to win a championship. And while that same goal this year is to do the same, I'm not convinced that they're going to be able to hit the ground running and be on the same page from day one. I think Joe is going to go in thinking this has to be a step-by-step, play with an edge, play with a sense of urgency, night in, night out thing. I think that there may be little subgroups on this roster who will think, well, yeah, I'm going to try to play well, but I know that what I do in April is in March. That's what this is really about. That's when it's time to start locking in and winning a championship. But Gary, we've seen enough teams that play that way, but by the time you get to March, it's too late.
Yeah,
it's too late because
Sherrod.
What's that?
Okay. I got a question. You covered the
question from the peanut gallery. Let's go.
No, this is actually your category. You covered the 04 Pistons. The 05 Pistons lost in Game 7. Like, what was their approach? Because they damn near did it. If somebody had decided to guard Robert Horry in Game 7, they might have had back-to-back.
Stop talking about my guy, Rasheed Abdul-Wahid.
If somebody had figured out that Robert Horry's a shooter, like, I don't know who, like, Robert Horry hits big shots. That's what he does. Mm-hmm. And you do not leave him open. The only egregious thing worse you could do is leave Steph open in the gold medal game. But you left Robert Horry open. If you don't, you probably go back to back. But what was the 04-05 Pistons approach? Because they almost got there. San Antonio was a great team and San Antonio deserved it, but the Pistons got this close.
Well, part of what really fueled them was similar to what we're talking about with Jalen and Jason. That is, their best players came in with a different kind of edge based on things that had nothing to do with them and everything to do with circumstances around them. If you recall back then, Larry Brown, it wasn't clear whether Larry Brown was going to be coming back as a head coach. And the players took that personal, like, dude, we just won a championship with you, and you're not sure you're going to be with us? You know what? We're just going to go out and ball out. And we just going to get that second chip with or without you. That was kind of their attitude. Chauncey was a big part of that, as you know. Ben Wallace, my man Rasheed Abdul-Wallace. And the thing about it, the other thing that they did that I thought was interesting was that they added a player who was even thirstier for a championship than they were when they added Antonio McDyess, who had never won a title. So they did similar to what the Celtics have done in the offseason, is that you add pieces that augment what you already have in place. Because that Pistons team pretty much brought back the band the following year, similar to what Boston has done. Not everyone, but they brought back most of the guys. But they play with a different edge. And that's the thing that I think separates teams that are going to position themselves to do it from those who talk about positioning themselves. When you look at Denver, for example, the fact that you didn't bring back Bruce Brown, we all knew them getting back there would be difficult. But when you don't bring back probably the most versatile and impactful player not named Jokic on your squad, you're probably going to suffer. And you look at the Celtics this year, they have wisely brought back all the key contributors to them winning a championship. And the one question that a lot of us had was that, man, it sure would be nice if they were able to get somebody who could get buckets off the bench. They re-signed Hauser, which I thought was a great deal. And now they got a guy in Lonnie Walker who is the insurance plan behind the insurance plan. Even though he's not that 15th guy, they can make that happen if they need to. They're in position to do that, but they're not totally committed to that. So I think the Celtics have done the things that you're supposed to do to position yourself to win another chip. But the big thing is, can your best players come back with the kind of motivation to repeat? And when you look at Tatum not playing, the whole Olympic kerfluffle that he was involved with, where he hardly played, and then Jaylen Brown not even being on the damn team after getting Eastern Conference Final MVP, NBA Finals
MVP. They couldn't have sent him a
MVP.
text message. They couldn't have emailed him, man. They couldn't have done nothing like Jaylen. They couldn't have done nothing.
Right. And the fact
they could have paged him. They could have, this is before your time, Noah. They could have paged him.
We got music out of it.
They could have sent a telegraph. They could have sent him a telegram. That was Gary's time.
Send him a letter.
Mine.
Like they just go. They just something. They ain't gonna even reach out to him. You're not on the team. Thank you, and have a good day. Derek White, what up, brother? Come on now.
No, Gary. It was like, wait, hold on a second. Hold on. Hey, Derek.
Derek's another
on the team.
Hold up, I got another call coming in. No, we good.
Put him on
hold. I'll get back to him.
So that's and to me, that's the thing that I think is scary about the Celtics is that they have legitimate beef, their top players, about playing with an attitude and an edge. And that's something that most NBA champions don't have. Because when you're at the top of the mountaintop, there really isn't a whole lot for you to be upset and angry about when that happens. But Jaylen Brown being pissed, yup. Tatum being pissed, yup. And the thing about it, because those guys are the leaders of your team, you know what's going to happen. If my leaders are pissed, what am I going to be? I'm going to be pissed too. So you're going to have a team, I think, most of the season that is going to play with an edge. I would not be surprised. Last year, they beat like 3 teams by 50 or more points. Would not be surprised if that number goes to 60. Goes to 6 this year.
60. I'm like, wow, Sherrod.
60. Now, they ain't going to do that.
With it. 82
they're going to do that. They're going to play with a different edge. They are absolutely going to play with a much sharper blade. And I pity the teams they're going to face because you're not getting a typical defending NBA champion. You're getting a team that's going to have that we have not won a chip in 35 years thirst. And as talented as they are, go ahead. Go with Philly. Go to New York. Not happening. Celtics going to repeat.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I said it.
Yeah, you said
Money's on it. I like it. I like to hear it.
Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. That's right. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. While daily fantasy lineups are cool, you can also get in on season-long projections as well. Should you go more or less on Patrick Mahomes throwing for 4,300 yards? And what about Aaron Rodgers and 3,750 yards passing? How about Tyreek Hill having more or less than 1,376 yards receiving? Or Saquon Barkley rushing for more than or less than 1,050 yards? Get in on the action by downloading the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, run your game.
All right, let's move on. This is a little unconventional turn from our usual topic, but we have to talk about the hottest name in pro basketball right now. Can you guess who I'm talking about?
It ain't Gary Washburn.
I'm crying. It's Caitlin Clark. Actually, if you're on X or Twitter, you probably... I know people have muted her name because she has become such a divisive figure in sports unintentionally. She seems like an unproblematic person, and yet her name has been dragged through the mud and beyond over the last, I mean, honestly, since the season began, but the Indiana Fever, the hottest team in the WNBA since the All-Star break. At right now, as we're recording, they have won 4 straight games, 8 out of the last 10. They're 6th in the league right now, where the top 8 are the ones that make it to the playoffs. But rookie year, we're talking about her. We've been talking about her. And of course, also Angel Reese is another name that people have been talking about as well for the rookie of the year conversation. But league MVP is a conversation that I think has made it even spicier. So I'll just, off the top, what do you all think about Caitlin's game and now being considered as one of the best in the league, or being talked about at least?
You just started, Noah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Caitlin's game, and I think that there's a lot of, I mean, anytime you bring her up now, it's like there's like 400 layers to it, I feel like.
Political party.
Yeah, I know, seriously. I mean, it feels like there's Caitlin, the basketball player, there's how people respond to her in the media, there's how the fan base that she has, which is not necessarily a reflection of her. And even that is it's a whole thing of her actual fans and then people that have kind of latched on to her as a political figure for really confusing reason to me, at least. But I think that she has a game that it kind of reminds me of Steph Curry in the sense that like he came in with this game that was different than other NBA players. And everybody knows, he revolutionized the game, but he really made, like, he's the reason that I fell in love with basketball. Like Steph Curry was the reason that I fell in love to another level, I think, of, just how aesthetically pleasing it was to watch, in a way that I don't think like other great players have that same aesthetic. And a lot of what her successes and her popularity, I do think, just comes down to the fact that she shoots threes farther than any NBA player, and she throws passes that are, ridiculous. And that combination, alongside the fact that she had such a great college career and came into the league and is now really meeting all expectations, if not surpassing them, has created a world where she's very, very popular. I don't think there's any competition anymore for Rookie of the Year, in my opinion. I think that ended a long time ago. If there was ever really a close race, and I'm a big Angel Reese fan too, and I think that the way that her rebounding discourse has been diminished is a whole other discussion that we could have. But as far as best player in the world, though, Caitlin Clark might be the most fun player to watch, but I don't know that it would be fair at all to compare what she's accomplished this year to what A'ja Wilson has accomplished this year. And it's just something that comes down to, there's a lot of reasons why that might be the case. And one of them, I think, is just the fact that post players in general are like, people get less excited about them. And then especially on the women's side, you're comparing it to the men's side. And it's like, she can't dunk. She can't do flashy things in the paint that men's players can do. Whereas Caitlin Clark, like, there's more carryover between the men's games. If you're watching women's basketball from like the men's game lens, you're going to appreciate Asia's game less. But she has been by far, and it's not even close, the most dominant player in the WNBA this year.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about just the whole Caitlin Clark discourse. The one thing that people who have been following the WNBA, or people who are casually following, don't seem to understand and embrace is the fact that she had one of the most difficult schedules at the start of the season than any superstar coming into the WNBA has ever had. You look at all the big dogs in the WNBA, and Caitlin had that was her, baptism by fire. And so, of course, she put up big numbers, and she put up bad big numbers like turnovers. But then as the schedule leveled out and she started playing and leading her team and becoming more familiar with them, and her coach figuring out how to better utilize her skill set, because I thought early on they just wanted her to be a shooter. And I'm thinking, like, did y'all watch her play in college? I mean, she was dropping some sweet and sick dimes, too. That's a big part of her game that she never gets enough credit for. Now you're starting to see more of that. But the bottom line is this. As the season progressed, her team started winning. They're one of the hottest teams, if not the hottest team. And that, to me, more than anything else, locked up the Rookie of the Year award for her. The fact that she's putting up numbers, unprecedented numbers, and they're winning. There's 5 teams in the league that have a better record than them right now. Whereas, 2-3 weeks ago, they were near the bottom down there with Dallas and teams like that. So she's winning, she's putting up big numbers, and she's making a difference, obviously, from the jump on the league as a whole. But I still say A'ja Wilson is the MVP this year. I've seen both of them play a ton of games, and the only way that I think that narrative could potentially change, and there's a chance that it could in a very tangible way, is if somehow between now and the end of the season, the Fever have a better record or as good a record as the Aces, because that's very possible. right now, the Las Vegas has like the fourth best record in the WNBA, and they're just 2 spots ahead of Indiana. So if that were to change, if all of a sudden Vegas went on a major slump and the fever in Indiana continued to surge, that gives, I think, those who are feeling, Caitlin is the best player, legitimate case for that. But Asia Wilson she's just different, yo.
Unreal.
She's just ridiculously good. And so it's a toss-up in the minds of many people. But right now, I would give the edge to Asia just because I think that she's been consistently elite all year, even if her team hasn't necessarily been that. Whereas Caitlin, I think, has gotten significantly better as the season has progressed and is trending in the right direction. But I can't ignore the fact that the first 2, 3, 4 weeks of the season, she wasn't very good. And to that extent, her schedule had a lot to do with it. The competition had a lot to do with that. Her coach not knowing how to utilize her had a lot to do with that. But that being said, you still, at the end of the day, you have to be the one to make plays. And she didn't make as many good ones early on. She's doing a lot of that now. You got to give her props. But to me, Asia's still the MVP.
Yeah, I agree totally. I just think this whole season is exposed with women's basketball. It's just a lot of issues in women's basketball that nobody, and hopefully Noah, I read your story. It was a great story the other day. No one's taking on these issues because unfortunately, I think people who cover the women's basketball in many cases feel like they have to promote the sport. And there's a lot of issues, and and what Caitlin has done is brought a lot of race issues, because it was kind of the underlying murmurs when Sabrina Ionescu was kind of pushed as the face of the league, right? And people were like, well, why her? Why not Asia? Why not Jewel Lloyd? Why, why not Chelsea Gray? And I think that unfortunately, to Caitlin's, it's not her fault. She is a player that I just think this is not a white girl thing. This is a Caitlin thing, because when Breanna Stewart entered the league, Breanna Stewart didn't get this much attention. Not even Sabrina Ionescu. And I've followed Sabrina. Sabrina went to high school in the Bay Area. She, like, Cal and Oregon were her final 2 schools. Unfortunately, she picked Oregon.
Smart girl.
Oh, God.
Best decision ever made.
So I literally have known about Sabrina Ionescu since she was in high school. And she went to Oregon, and people, when she gets to the league, she's going to revolutionize the league. And she has. She's had a very good career, gold medalist, but she ain't Caitlin. Like, this is a Caitlin Clark, and I don't know what it is, besides, as Norton alluded to, the Steph factor, the 30-footers, the razzle-dazzle. So I just think instead of the people pointing, it's a white girl thing, or y'all are only supporting the straight white girl, it's just a Caitlin thing. And I think we have to kind of realize there's something special about her, that people are filling up 19,000 seat arenas in LA and places that don't have a huge they filled up the Hawks don't fill up State Farm Arena in Atlanta. She filled up State Farm Arena last week in Atlanta for the Dream and Fever game. It's something there, and the WNBA needs to embrace it. That's the thing. Here it is. And you got to give her credit. And you got to give Angel Reese her credit, because she is doing great things. And Camila Cardozo, it's an amazing class. The one great thing that I've written this before, that women's basketball finally did that men's haven't, is mesh college and pro. So by the time these gals, Paige Buckers, I don't know about you, Noah. I look when are you getting out of UConn? She is literally at the U.S. Open. Yeah. She's at she's everywhere. And it's wait a minute, she has a year left. Juju Watkins, by the time she gets out of SC, we're going to be are you still there? And even though she'll go for 4 years, it was Grant Hill. Yeah. Remember when Grant Hill was at Duke, Sherrod? It was damn, Grant, because Grant went 4 years. Damn, Grant, you still at Duke. And he was all-time great player. But it's what the one thing we've done is women's basketball is meshed college and pro. So by the time these young ladies get out of college, we know who they are. We don't know none of the male draft class. We know Alex Sarr. If I said name the top 10 drafted, you would be I
I
cannot
just
name
know that France had the number 1 pick, and that's crazy.
I cannot name the first 10
US.
players drafted. I can throw the names out. I don't know where they're going. Reed Shepherd, Dillingham, but I don't know a lot of these guys. I've never seen them play. With women, with Juju Watkins, we got at least 2 more years. Maybe she can come out after her junior year. Who knows what she's going to do? Paige Buckers, like she's got 1 more year at UConn. Like there are plenty. Like by the time they get to the WNBA, they already have a personality. And I think that's the great thing that helped this class is Angel already had, she was Barbie, and Angel had marketing deals. Like Flo J. Johnson literally was in the All-Star game, as you saw, Noah, at the Big Three. She's got 2 more years left at LSU. Like she is a celeb. She's a rapper. Like we talked about this before. Like she's already a celeb and she's 20. Like we don't know what player, who's a top ranked returning player in NCAA basketball men's this year.
Jesus.
I have no idea. Like all the UConn players left. Like I have no idea who's like the number 1, Cooper Flagg, but he ain't played college yet. I'm talking about the returning. Like we don't know these people. In women's, we do. And that's enhanced the WNBA and Caitlin, and then the TV deal showing the Final Four. Like all of that has come, and Caitlin's been the top, and so has Angel Reese. And I think that's been good. I just think it's sad that some WNBA folks aren't embracing that and they're picking sides, or you don't give love. Like I think we all love Asia. Asia is unquestionably the MVP. Like she's the best player in the game. Will Caitlin get votes, like a 5th place, or I don't know how many?
Caitlin gonna get votes.
Yeah, she'll get a 5th.
Well, that's the thing.
Because I think Nicole Year's got to be 2nd, right? And then I don't know if you want the Alyssa Thomas from the Connecticut. I don't know who'll be 3rd.
Top 3, top 4.
Yeah, but Caitlin's going to get 4th, 5th place votes. Somebody will vote her first. Let's be honest. Like Asia ain't going unanimous. But for me, I just think it's sad. Like this whole thing with Cheryl Swoops and now Nancy Lieberman jumps in. Like we got to embrace it's a Caitlin thing, and she's great. Angel's great. There's a lot of great players. Let's love this as opposed to like picking out who. Well, you don't give her as much love as her. Like I think like Angel just got a shoe deal, right? Like Reebok. Yeah. So like it's happening, and I just think this is great for the WNBA. And next year, Paige Buckers comes in, and then there's going to be Hannah Hidalgo. I mean, there's going to be, Juju Watkins. They're coming. And I think this is great for the sport. But all this infighting and going on Twitter, and I read some people's Twitter accounts, and they're just literally duking it out about Caitlin and who's this, and y'all don't give Angel no love, and y'all hate Kennedy Carter, and it's like man, this is it's hard to constantly love the sport or want to do the sport to do well, and then everybody's just fighting. No one's like, this is the best season of all time. I'm going to assume, right? One of the most popular season. I mean,
so Gary, you're queuing me up perfectly. So I'm going to quickly read an excerpt out of your column, Noah. The title on SB Nation: "The vitriol WNBA players face for fouling Caitlin Clark is unacceptable and racist." And my favorite graph in it, obviously, I would recommend people to go read the whole thing, but there's a point in the article where you say, "But she isn't a savior because women's basketball doesn't need saving. The 2023 WNBA season already experienced record-breaking success, and popularity in the league has proliferated since its inception in 1997. While Clark is obviously a part of expediting that growth, she is not single-handedly responsible for the WNBA popularity boom this season." But to your point, Gary, that was the next topic that we were going to get into: the Nancy Lieberman and Cheryl Swoops drama on X, and it spilled into the Stephen A. Smith show. I mean, to kind of sum it up, basically they agree very differently about Caitlin Clark and what she's contributed to the league. And Nancy Lieberman basically was like, all right, it's okay to have these opinions, Cheryl, about Caitlin Clark, but make sure you're getting the stats correct, which I do agree when you're talking about the stats of a player. Even if you're trying to, conflate what you're saying for dramatic effect, you still have to make sure you're getting the numbers right. And that's necessarily essentially what she didn't do. But Gary, I'll let you continue because I would love to hear when you think about this story, it's not even just about women's basketball versus men's basketball. Now it's become this racial issue as well. And it's spilled over into a nasty conversation, which we already have the political spectrum here in the US that's divided our country. And now you have the world of basketball where people are evenly divided about whether or not she's worth being talked about. When, again, I'm pretty sure Caitlin Clark, even though she's had a great season on the court, I'm sure she's frustrated off the court because of the way her name continuously is in the news, and she has barely said a thing about it.
Yeah, I think what we're realizing, and this is an NBA thing too, okay, like not every great player is equipped to be an analyst. There's plenty of great players who are older who don't like any of the younger players. Like they don't like that they make more money. They don't like that they're quote unquote softer. They don't like the jersey swaps after the game. They don't like that these guys pal around. They don't like that the guys have social media followings. They don't like we saw Shaq go at Dwight Howard. I remember, and I'm aging myself. I remember like the difference between like, and this is old. I'll get to where I'm getting to. Just follow me. Bill Russell and Will Chamberlain. Bill Russell after his career, became a commentator. Eventually, after a coaching career, he started becoming a commentator, right? Then he became a coach a couple times, but he went back to commentating. Over his last several years, Bill Russell embraced young players. Like he joked with them, he laughed with them, he wore a Kobe jersey to the Kobe tribute. A lot of the young players, especially LeBron, when LeBron won the Finals MVP, like they all embraced him. Bill jumped in and was like, hey, you guys, young guys are good. You're okay. Wilt Chamberlain, before he passed in 99, Wilt Chamberlain was like, none of y'all young mofos can mess with me in my day. Like y'all even compare to me. Get away from like, Wilt was not very nice or embracing to the younger generation, especially of big men. Remember, you might just want to try. Remember Jim Brown? Jim Brown used to drag running backs, like after his days. Oh, that dude's soft. He runs out of bounds. He don't take no tackles on. He don't run hard like I did. Like Jim Brown didn't like none of the curve. He liked 3 or 4, right? Jim Brown, all-time great. Don't be an analyst because you don't like half the league. And if you're Cheryl Swoops, you've got to understand that Caitlin is the future of the league. You can't be like, I'm not got nothing to say about her.
Yeah.
I'll talk about it. Like, you've got to understand that she's a great player. And then she posted that apology, which was, it was COVID, girl. I forgot. Like, it was this. It was a screenshot of the apology that she texted Caitlin, who took it well. And
that's what made it worse because it's like 3 years ago. She dropped
a COVID excuse. That's why I didn't have because she was saying on podcast, oh, she's 24. She played and let's be honest, like with, and I'll let Noah go, like with all these college records now and people playing 5th, 6th, 7th seasons, that's how it is. You got to look at games played because there's going to be a lot of college records broken because these fools is playing 200 college games where people before we're playing like 140, 150 because of the extra season and a half and medical red shirts and all that. Some dude from Miami football, it's his 9th college season. Like, damn. You talking about rerun?
You a grown man.
Yeah, like
you're gonna be an AARP before you get out of college.
Like 20, it's his 9th season, and he caught a touchdown pass. Like he's still playing college ball. Like
probably from his son.
I remember being in college, and if you were like 23, people were like, man, you mad old. They was calling 23-year-olds grandpa. These fools is 26, 27 on campus. So to me, Cheryl's got some type of issue that she's got to, if you want to continue to be an analyst, a successful analyst, you got to let that go. If not, just be an all-time great and just kiss babies and high five fans and sign autographs. But if you need to be an analyst, look at all the analysts we have. Most of them are like, they are fair. They might not like one dude or whatever, but most of them, you've got to kind of swallow your pride of like, I'm better than that dude, and just appreciate that these young people, it's like us as journalists. I can't hate on the young journalists coming out, well, y'all didn't have it. I'm glad they didn't have it as hard as I did. I'm glad like the platform is different. I can't hate on that because they were born 20 something years later. Like there's a sense of hateration there that Cheryl's got to let go because it kind of taints her reputation as an all-time great. Like, and she is. Like, nobody can deny she's was an amazing player. But this whole you're 52 and you're going at it with a 22-year-old. That you ain't winning in that situation. Like let that go and figure out how you're going to approach your job if you're going to be an analyst. Sorry, I'm done.
I have a lot to say on this topic, so I'll try to be brief.
Take your time.
I think first of all, Gary, I agree with a lot of what you said, but I don't really care what Sheryl Swoopes had to say, and I don't know why Sheryl Swoopes has become like the big storyline, because I want to talk about like why does Gilbert Arenas have a platform still? Former players have terrible takes every single day. Every time I hear Paul Pierce talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that was like my favorite player growing up. I mean, we have guys that have made a career out of hating LeBron. I mean, seriously, there's guys in the media that's been their thing. Right?
Perkins, yeah.
Summertime is winding down, but the college football season will be in full swing before you know it. There's no better way to get your college football fix than Game Time, which is where you can find the best deals on college football game tickets, concerts, NFL, WNBA, and so much more. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff, so show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The one college football game I'm looking forward to seeing this year is when my alma mater, Syracuse University, comes to my neck of the woods and takes on the Boston College Eagles. There's a great selection of seats starting as low as, get this folks, $3. That's right, $3 can get you in the building. Having the map of the stadium along with the different color-coded prices makes it super easy to find the best seats for your budget and not have to scramble all over the place on your app to do so. And you're covered by Game Time's lowest price guarantee, where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Right. And Charles Barkley was on Bill Simmons' podcast today talking about embracing the new generation. Charles Barkley disrespects Anthony Davis every single time Anthony Davis winces, when Anthony Davis has had a very good NBA career. So I just think that women are held to a standard where like we're not supposed to be competitive with one another, and we're not supposed to have like any sort of regular human emotions that aren't just like uplifting and cheering each other on and emotion and being supportive. And I love that the WNBA is tougher than the NBA. Like, I'm an NBA fan first. Like, that was the league that I fell in love with first. And watching the WNBA over the last few years, I'm like, they're so much tougher. They actually seem to hate each other, which is so fun to watch, that you see teams playing one another, that there's like real rivalries and there's players that individually dislike each other. And a lot of the stuff that's been taken out of the WNBA and discussed through like an NBA lens, I feel like is applying like NBA politics to it. Like, Diane Taurasi was roasted for her comments on Caitlin Clark, last season about how it's going to be a hard transition. Like, that's how Diane Taurasi just talks about literally everybody. And so I think that like the problem that I have with the way that this idea has been pushed, that the league hasn't embraced Caitlin Clark, and that the veterans are salty and resentful, and that they're just bitter people, and they don't want to kind of benefit from the growth of this league, is that I don't think that's true. I think there's been so many wonderful instances of veterans really embracing her and saying positive things about her, but those things just don't go viral. And instead, the one really well-known case right now of Sheryl Swoopes, who I don't know a lot about how her career as an analyst has been. She might have a ton of terrible takes under her wing, in which case I would say let's file her under, like you said, players who didn't make good analysts, and that's it. But I feel like now she's been representing this idea that the entire WNBA and all of the older players, and particularly players of color and a lot of queer athletes, are like anti-Caitlin Clark. And I just don't think that's true. What I do think is true is that Caitlin Clark, for some reason, has attracted a person that I have never seen in sports before. It is a very right wing, very conservative, very hateful person. And that's not her whole fan base at all. She has lots of normal fans. We are all her fans, right? But she has unlocked a part of the population. I've never, since writing that article, I have never ever received or seen, honestly, in real life, the type of hate that I've seen since then. And I have found corners of the internet that I didn't know existed. I mean, I knew in theory, but I'd never seen them. Like, honestly, like, I don't want to get too personal or too. I know we've been going on for a while here, but like I'm Jewish. It has not come up whatsoever in my life. I'm not religious. I would basically say it's not really a part of my identity much, but on paper, I'm Jewish. And the only time I hear about anti-Semitism or things is around like the Israel-Palestine conflict. And I view all that with like a grain of salt because I think it's a complex political issue. I will say up until a week ago, I had never faced any anti-Semitism. There are entire accounts right now on Twitter that are all photos of me and my mom and photoshops that people have found from my old Facebook, people Venmoing me things, like just all because I wrote that article. And I've talked to other people that have called light to the fact that this league has been disproportionately covered, and everybody receives this kind of feedback. And so I've had players reach out to me and be like, this article is like, nobody wants to talk about the fact that there's something like sinister that's been brewing under the surface, and it's not her fault, and it's not the Fever's fault. And I want her to win the championship this year because I think that it would be great for women's basketball to see her succeed at the highest level. But I also think that we can't be diminishing the fact that there is a problem with the way she, with what she's brought with her completely inadvertently and what she's attracted. And I don't really understand it. I've asked some of these people firsthand, like, since when do you care about women's sports? Like, why did this, like, I don't understand the psychology here. And there will be books written about this in 10 years, in 20 years, and 30 years about what happened here. But I just think it's important because I keep seeing people say like the league has to embrace her, like there's resentment. I think there's resentment towards the fact that there's now a level of hatred that wasn't in the league in years prior. And now players are suffering. People that are fouling her now are all of a sudden, I can't even imagine it because I wrote an article and I'm like a white person who lives in Boston. And so I can't even imagine what other people are experiencing. And I'm honestly glad that I've had this experience because I feel like it's almost like firsthand journalism where I'm getting a glimpse of like what someone else's lived experience might look like. But I just want to say, like, I feel like that is the part of this that maybe people don't understand as much because it just sounds like I've had a lot, and I'm not engaging with these commenters or anything anymore, but I've had people say like, I don't believe you, like show me screenshots. And I'm like, I'm not even going to go through these screenshots anymore because it's been genuinely the most disturbing 4 days of my life as far as anything I've ever seen online. And the other thing that I just wanted to add is that the important thing is that her rise and her popularity and her fame, it does benefit the league as a whole. And financially, it's inevitably going to do that because financially, more eyes, more tickets, ESPN games, like that's all going to be a positive. But I do think the media has a responsibility to also shine light on the fact that Kelsey Mitchell has actually been the leading scorer during the Fever's playoff run, during the Fever's last 10 games. I mean, she's the second leading scorer in the WNBA today. And if I put her name in a headline, nobody clicks on it because nobody knows that she's actually like the offensive driver on that team. So that's what I have an issue with. I want Kelsey Mitchell to get her flowers. And I want people to recognize that what Aaliyah Boston has done as a post player, her evolution this season has been the best evolution as far as passing from a big that I've ever seen. And there's so many different components to this. And instead, every time I turn on ESPN or any sort of like mainstream basketball show, all they do is, why do all the women in the WNBA hate Caitlin Clark, and why are people calling out racism? This is just she just happens to be white. And I'm like, I get all that, but there's so many other layers to this that people are experiencing. And I think that's what and I'm slowly learning more and more about it as I touch this topic. I mean, I'm not writing about Caitlin Clark for another 2 weeks because I'm just honestly like, I can't do it. But I just wanted to share that because I do think there's like more to it than maybe meets the eye.
Thanks for the vulnerability, but also, again, the article, because the fact that it spewed so much hate, I hate that you have had to deal with it, but it also just further magnifies the fact that, like you said, there is an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and the issues, plural, not singular, because I think there are lots of issues that are out there. And to your point about Kelsey Mitchell, I mean, when the Fever, finally got over 500 with their overall record, and it was the first time in a long time they'd been there. Kelsey Mitchell had like 36 points. I remember reading the story on a certain 4-letter network, and the mention of her being the leading scorer was like in the 7th, 8th paragraph. How in the hell does that happen? Her name wasn't in the headline, wasn't in the lead. It was in like the 7th or 8th paragraph of the story. And to me, it speaks to how in the media, we're not as concerned about what the story is, but more so about the narrative that we can create based upon the event. And again, I understand the thinking behind that, don't necessarily agree with it. But the whole Caitlin Clark saga narrative, however you want to describe it, it comes down to something that's as basic and fundamental as things can be. What's the right thing to do? What's the right thing to do? Are we going to sit up here and talk about how there's nothing to see here when there's a lot to see here? The only positive that I see, well, I would say one of the biggest positives I see in all of this is that we're having conversations about this league that don't necessarily involve lack of this, or they can't do that, or a lot of the BS, frankly, that we're talking about in the WNBA is a lot of the BS that we've talked about in the NBA for a long time. The only difference is that now you're looking at it from a different lens, but you're wearing the same spectacles nonetheless. It's a different situation, yet many of the same issues are still prevalent. And Gary, this was back in Gary's time, when you had Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. There was a lot of divisiveness about those two. When you look at their time in college, then they go to like two very polarizing franchises in the NBA, and how you either were a Lakers fan in Magic or you were a Celtics fan, and you loved Larry Bird. And typically the fan that picked one or the other, if you're black, you go with Magic. If you're white, you go with Larry. And you don't necessarily have that per se with Caitlin and Angel Reese, because both of them, I think, are great players in different ways. But there's no denying the impact that Caitlin Clark has had on the league and women's basketball overall. You just can't get away from that. And when you have that type of reach, you're going to unfortunately find yourself being touted up by folks who you weren't trying to reach out to. And we see a lot of that with Caitlin Clark. And I to me, she is the person who is most negatively impacted by her reach, because you can talk about the financial gains that she has and the attention that she's getting, but with that attention, there is a dark side to that. And that dark side is when you have folks who don't necessarily align with your own personal beliefs, who are now touting you as if you do have their same beliefs, that the fact that you are the example of what they've been talking about, that's wrong with this and wrong with that. And if you're Caitlin Clark, it's like, I'm just trying to win games. I'm just trying to get buckets. I'm just trying to be the best player on the floor every night, like every single other, person that I'm on the floor with. They're trying to do the same thing. And, she's got caught in the crosshairs of a never-ending societal battle that she didn't sign up for. She just wants to be a great basketball player. And I wish we would have more conversations about what she does beyond just being a scorer. I wish we talk more about just the way that her leadership has grown and evolved. I wish we talk more about how she's empowered folks, like Boston, who is a much better player now with Caitlin Clark than she was without her last year. I wish more of those type of conversations and discourse were happening, but unfortunately they're not. And part of to me, the blessing and the burden of having an expanded base of fans is that you're going to get some bad seeds in there. You're going to get some bad characters and some bad actors who are going to utilize your talents and your skills and the platform that your talent has given you to their benefit, even though that benefit is not necessarily aligned with what you believe in and what your position on certain matters are. And Caitlin has been, I think the smartest thing that Caitlin has really done more than anything is she's tried her best to not move in any direction that the wind is blowing. Like when you have a certain segment of society that feels a certain way, Caitlin tries to stay as steady in the middle as possible. And I think for her own personal sanity, because one of the things I think a lot about with Caitlin Clark does she have the kind of support system that's going to help her get through a lot of the mental health challenges that I know that she's battling? There's no way you can be dealing with all the stuff that she is dealing with, both intentionally as far as basketball and commitments and things like that, and a lot of the bullshit that she has no control over that just finds its way into her life. Does she have a support system that's helping her navigate that space? And it looks from afar like she does. And that, to me, that's the joy that I get in seeing her play. The fact that she can go out there and have all these things going on around her and still go out there and get you 28, 12, and 5 rebounds, and they win by 6. That's, to me, that's the joy I get in watching her play. The fact that she's able to play relatively freely without a lot of the noise getting in the way. And I do think over time that noise will quiet down, because I do think over time, I think Caitlin is going to become more comfortable in her position and status in the WNBA and in her status as a global icon. I don't think she's there quite yet, but she is definitely trending in that direction, similar to what we've seen with LeBron, similar to what we've seen with Kobe, who, again, all great players, but there's something about them that was different. I mean, you look at a guy like Tim Duncan, who was a phenomenal player. I don't think any of us would consider him a global icon, but he was arguably one of the most talented players, if not the most talented player of his era. But then you look at guys like Kobe, who didn't win nearly as much individual accolades as a Tim Duncan. Kobe was a bigger deal globally. You look at LeBron, Jokic and Giannis, they're right up there as well, but LeBron is different. And Caitlin, in many respects, is along those lines as far as being different in a good way. But again, like I said earlier, there are some bad actors that come with that global expansion of your reach. And unfortunately, we hear more about them than we should have, when it comes to Caitlin Clark discourse.
I think, honestly, I'll just add this real quick. One, with Sheryl Swoopes, if you're Sheryl Swoopes and they put up on the screen, the players of the week are Nafisha Collier and Caitlin Clark, and you don't say anything, and you just are like radio silence, that's a bad look. And then if you talk about how great the Indiana Fever are doing, and you mention everybody besides Caitlin Clark, why they're rising, it's obviously an oversight. It's intentional. And I just think the pettiness is just like I think that's why people are like, you don't have to love like Caitlin Clark. But I also think a comparison is Victor Wembanyama, right? And this is a freak of nature. They've come into the league around the same time. Victor, obviously 7'4", 7'4", whatever, right? But Victor's like a generational player. Victor is going to be the man in this league for a decade, probably in the next 2 to 3 years. And you see other people around the league being like, man, that dude is amazing. Like NBA players and former players have done nothing but kind of applaud him for his skill set and his potential. And I think when Caitlin got into the league, it just probably wasn't the same, maybe because no one knew that she was going to have this immediate impact.
You know what it is, Gary? You know what I think it is, though, not to cut you off? I think it's the fact that, and you just touched on it, the fact that there were physical eyeball tests told you he was going to be different. 7'4" guy who could play like he could. And so it's easy to kind of fall in line with that. He's going to be great. Caitlin, if you saw Caitlin walking down the street and did not know her.
We've seen NBA players like laud him. And then I think people expected that Caitlin Clark was going to get that. Then Taurasi was Caitlin Clark 20 years ago. Let's be honest. Caitlin Clark should have made the Olympic team. It's just like I saw Caitlin Clark jersey in Paris. Like people wanted to see her. Diana Taurasi scored 2 baskets in the Olympics. Like she probably, was like, it was great to see her in the 6th Olympics. She's done. She's retired. She has
overstayed her welcome. I will admit
but
that.
It was like for her to just kind of fill a spot, and Caitlin would have brought more attention. And it was great attention. That gold medal game against France was exciting. Their run was exciting. A lot of great players. But I just think people were kind of looking for I just remember when Jordan hit the league, and now Jordan got a lot of hate. But when Jordan hit the league, people were like, yeah, like this dude is different. Like when great players hit the league, when LeBron hit the league, they were players like, yeah, this dude is different. And there was kind of an adulation there. Then the hate came because LeBron didn't win right away or whatever. Then he made the decision. And so people have been really hard on LeBron. But I think there was this perception that Caitlin was going to be embraced, and she wasn't. And why she wasn't that's many different reasons. Every player has a particular opinion. I think Candy Carter, when she was like, all she do is shoot threes, like, did that help? No. Because Candy Carter, no offense, has been with like 5 different teams. She was with the Sparks.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah, she got told to leave the Sparks. Like Kenny's had a checkered career, and then now she's found her calling. I'm happy that she's stuck in the league because like she was kind of an afterthought. Like she literally bounced around and she had quote unquote attitude problems or whatever. So you're pitting her against Caitlin. Caitlin's going to win that every time, unfortunately, because people look at Carter's history and she looks like the angry woman mad at Caitlin. So I just think there's so many issues to address that Caitlin has nothing to do with, that Caitlin kind of walked into. Do white players get bigger advantages and sales in the WNBA than black players? Why is this player, why does everybody love Stewie, but everybody doesn't love Asia? Like there's all these, because it was Stewie against Asia a couple years ago, where it was just like, why doesn't Asia get that love? Why does everybody think Stewie's the best? Like it's like there was the same thing. And I think those are issues that need to be discussed that aren't discussed. And unfortunately, what we have is this like now, like Noah alluded to, this new population of fans who are like, oh, y'all just hate her because she's white. And y'all just hate her because she's good. And y'all a bunch of jealous heifers. Like, no, that's not it. It's unfortunate because that's what it's turned into. It turned to a very, very elementary argument where the argument and the issues in the league are very complex. That's all.
Well, this has definitely been the most productive conversation I've witnessed about Caitlin Clark. So kudos to all of you. But we started this episode talking about the Celtics on the court. We'll close out with the ones that were in court over the last week. I knew the reaction was going to be cringe, but it's okay. This is what I'm here for. This is what I'm here for. So first up, I'm going to start with Big Baby. Big Baby is actually going to delay his prison time because he's working on a documentary about his life. For those who may not have known, he was convicted of defrauding the NBA, using the NBA insurance to basically pocket some money. And now, as a result, he'll have to serve 3 years in prison. But again, the court of New York said that he can delay it so that he can finish his documentary, which I'm curious to see how that one will end. But then Rajon Rondo, the more prominent name for most, he pled guilty to misdemeanor gun charges. He was pulled over. The trooper smelled weed in his car and then did a search, found that he had drug paraphernalia as well. But he avoided jail sentencing, and that was dismissed as well. But the 08 Celtics, you two were there for that. So, I mean, were you surprised by either?
I wasn't there for that. I was still in Detroit.
Gary was here. You weren't here. You were there.
I was not there for the 08.
Oh, you weren't here?
I was,
we both covered Big Baby and
but you worked with Rondo. Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, and I did cover the Celtics, for the championship run from afar.
Oh yeah,
national reporter. It's disappointing for both of them, obviously. I mean, having been around both of those guys, I mean, great personalities. Rondo, more times than not, is one of, if not the smartest basketball mind I've been around. The way that he thinks the game, he really, you hear coaches often talk about, I want my point guard to be an extension of me, the coach. Rondo is as good an example of that as you'll ever find. In fact, and Rondo would back me up on this, he's probably better at navigating and managing the squad than some of the coaches he's had. Not all of them, but there's a couple that were a little suspect that Rondo was probably better at handling things than they were. But it's disappointing, obviously, for them to go through something like this. For Rondo, I'm glad he's not going to get any time, but he's still going to be punished in some way, some capacity for what he did. But it's just a bad look for that team to have two guys who were so instrumental in you winning a championship, who are going through something like that, who are in the news right now for all the wrong reasons. So disappointed with that, obviously. But man, I'm curious what KG thinking about this. To be candid with you, that's what I want to hear from.
Yeah.
What's Big Ticket saying about all this?
I want to read his group chat messages for sure. But all right. Well, did you have thoughts, Gary, before we wrap? Noah, Gary?
The Rondo thing, NBA players smoke weed, so that's not a shocker.
What?
And NBA
they were smoking before it was legal. So who are we?
NBA players have guns. So I'm not as disappointed in Rondo. He's had some other situations that a little bit more concerning. I know he wants to become an NBA coach, and this is not helping.
It's not.
You need to live free and clean for a while. I know his son is a rising prospect, Rajon Jr.
He's nice.
He's like 13 years old now. The one who was like with the champagne bottle when they won the title in the bubble, him.
Yeah.
He's growing up. And so I think I'm not as concerned with Rondo. Rondo has enough savvy. He just needs to make better decisions. Big Baby's the one that's really bothersome because I think there's a lack of common sense, a lack of education, a lack of like Big Baby
accountability too.
Yeah, I don't think Big Baby did really well with his money. I know he signed that mid-level exception, I think 4 years, 24 million with the Magic. And I think that's then he hurt his foot and he started getting hurt. Then he didn't finish that. I think the Magic waived him, and then all of a sudden became kind of a journeyman. His weight got out of control. I know he had a little stint with the Clippers. And then he was out of the league, and he was like, he might have been 27, right? So I think it's Big Baby is 38, I want to say. And I think he last played in 2015. So he might have, I think he was 29 when his last NBA game. And that's really young. I just feel bad that he got drawn into this thing. The hustle was that because the league and the guy who did the book on Spencer Haywood really fought with the Players Association to go in on getting a lot of these former players full health care, because there was guys like Moses Malone died at 60, Daryl Dawkins. There was a great NBA center, Marvin Webster. They called him the human eraser because he blocked shots. They found him in like a hotel bathtub. Like, these guys were not healthy after their career. They didn't have enough medical insurance to really take care of themselves, get things like heart screenings, diabetes checks, things like that. And then I talked to a few former players who were like, we can't just go exercise anymore. Our hips are done. We need knee replacements. We can't just go run 6 miles. Like, we've got to swim. We've got to do special exercises to stay in shape, right? To keep our health. So the NBA, the Players Association, all combined to have full health care for a lot of these former players, especially the ABA players who did not have a health care plan when the league folded. So you had a lot of these guys who played 10 years in the ABA and they didn't have a pension. So for Big Baby and this crew, Terrence Williams, another former Celtic, Keon Dooling, they were literally filing false medical record statements saying they got a root canal
procedures.
Yes, root canal. Some guy said he had 2 root canals in the same day. They got a crooked doctor to sign off on it, and they were collecting the money. So the league was like, "Oh, okay, so you paid $8,000. Well, here's $4,000, or here's the insurance side of it, and you pay $2,000. We'll pay $6,000." So these guys were just collecting these checks as a way to make fast cash, and a lot of them got busted for it. And Baby, I saw an interview. He denied, my name got thrown in. I didn't know. Like, he's like you said, not like Kwani, not accountability. And I just think there's a lack of education there. I feel bad for Big Baby. He was trying to make money. Yeah. And I was told by people from the Celtics that, like, hey man, he needs money. And he was trying to do stand-up comedy.
I interviewed him right before a show here in Boston to start really building up his comedy tour. And to your point, it's like there were honest ways to do that, but he actually ended up getting indicted right before he was supposed to be in Massachusetts and ended up having to cancel the show as a result. So it's like, your point, he needs like wise counsel around him to just really.
So I feel bad, like that story, and then he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get in great shape in jail," and you're going this ain't funny, Glenn. Yeah. This ain't funny anymore. Like the whole Big Baby, I think he kind of fed into that bad pun, but the whole thing of him, and because we were around. Sherrod and Doc was hard on that dude. Doc was, and
he needed that though.
15 years, but I don't know, 15 years ago, like the whole mental health thing and people being like, that was mental health because Doc took a weight shot at him every opportunity about how heavy he was, thinking that was going to get him going. Obviously it didn't, but and now if Doc would do that, it would be called fat shaming. But to me, it's just sad. I feel bad. I hope Glenn can get himself and shake the Big Baby and the big, shake that reputation, get his mind right, his life right. He's not even 40 yet, and get things together. And I don't know what this film is going to do. Hopefully he gets out maybe a year and a half. Maybe this will be the change that he needs, because it's sad. It's like the Rondo thing's different. This one, the lack of education, him not accountability, him getting his name drawn into this, and then getting arrested for it, it's sad.
All right, well, on that note, we will close this episode of the Big Three NBA podcast. Again, thank you to our special guest, Noah, for bearing with us. It wasn't that bad, was it? Okay, we're kind of cool. Thank you to Noah, and of course, for Sherrod Blakely and Gary Washburn, I'm Kwani Lunis. This is the Big Three NBA podcast. Thank you for listening.